Have you ever used a Bible verse as a pick-me-up or to pick someone else up? Maybe you used it to motivate yourself or to tell yourself that everything was going to be okay. I'm certain that we've each been in a bad situation and used a verse to get us through it. Well, what if you didn't come through the situation well, or things did not get better right away? Was it a kick in the faith, maybe? Just a little kick when it didn't come out the way you thought. You've been using this Bible verse to keep you going. Maybe it made you question your faith a little bit. Maybe you asked, well, why didn't things get better? Because the Bible promised. I know we seldom admit that we question our faith, but I'm sure that we all have at some point in time. Did you ever consider that the verses you use to pull you through don't mean what you think they do? Have you ever wanted to read something about the Bible and didn't know where to begin, so you started with the internet to point you in the right direction? I know I do that now and then. I want to read some of the Bible, but I don't know exactly where to go, so I get on the internet first and do a quick Google search and get me pointed in the right direction, then I go to the Bible, or I just read the website that I find. Well, I did that the other day. Wanted to get through something, just wanted to do a little reading on something. I came to a website that started using Bible quotes to talk about life and following God's plan. It was all well and good and made me feel all warm and fuzzy inside until I looked closely at the Bible verses and realized they were being taken out of context. A little confused. Wait a minute, this doesn't mean what they think it means. And we frequently do that. We cherry pick verses because they make us feel better. Or we use them to remind us that we'll get through whatever that's troubling us. For instance, take Jeremiah 29:11. This was the one that happened to be on the website that I found the other day that I was going to use to help me find my message and find my place in the Bible. But it was a little off. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Now, many people think of this verse when things are not going right in their life, and it makes them feel better. It gets you going in the right direction. You're like, oh, he's got plans to prosper me. It's all going to be good in the long run. It may take a while, but I'm going to prosper. I'm going to be okay. But when we put this verse in context, it changes it a little bit, and you might realize, may not be the plan right now is to prosper you. When this verse was said, it was the Israelites had just been hauled away to Babylon, and God was speaking to them through Jeremiah in verses 4 through 23. Now I'm going to shorten it a little bit, but this is kind of long, but we're going to put this in context so you really see. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all of those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and settle down, plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters, find wives for your sons, and give your daughters in marriage, so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there, do not decrease. Also, seek the peace and prosperity of the city for which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. Yes, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Do not let the prophets and diviners among you deceive you. Do not listen to the dreams you encourage them to have. They are prophesying lies to you in my name. I have not sent them, declares the Lord. This is what the Lord says. When 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my good promise to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. So this wasn't a verse telling you that you will prosper, that we will prosper, but a message from God telling the Israelites that they'll come through this when they were banished to Babylon, to tell them to settle and make peace and to continue on their ways. So when we use this verse to say, you know what, I'm going to prosper, that's the plan. Well, what happens when we don't prosper and things continue to challenge us? We start to have doubts. We start to wonder about that verse. Well, was that the right verse, or did I misunderstand? Or worse yet, we say, is it real? Is it true? Because I didn't prosper, it didn't work out. If you kept telling yourself this and things just didn't get better, you will have doubts. But if you read it in the proper context to begin with, you would have maintained your faith and still believed that God is with you. It wouldn't have been a problem to begin with. You'd have been like, well, he wasn't particularly talking to me, he was talking to the Israelites. Now, there's nothing wrong with feeling that God has plans to prosper you, but he doesn't always. He sometimes has plans to teach you a lesson. Some of those lessons, look at some of the people who were taught lessons in the Bible. They weren't good. One guy got swallowed by a whale. So, I don't think that was plans to prosper him right away. So, another verse that I see a lot, especially with athletes and major athletes in sports, is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through he that strengthens me. Maybe you can. But I wouldn't recommend going out and trying to climb Mount Everest right now because of this verse saying, you know, I can do all things. I'm going to go climb Mount Everest. If you have enough faith, then you can move Everest. But when you start getting cold, I'm betting you'll start to have some regrets. Let's look at this verse, though, for a moment. Paul was in a Roman prison facing certain death. And he says in this verse, I rejoice greatly in the Lord, that at last you were renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Now let's look at that. Now if you're struggling and you think, God can prosper me, maybe this is the verse for you when you're going through hard times. Not the, I can conquer the world because I have all things. He was in prison. He was facing death, but he was like, you know, I'm not going to worry because I can get through this. This is more the pick-me-up verse than the I can conquer the world verse. Now don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with feeling you can conquer the world in your faith, but let's do it right. So he's saying, as I said, I'll get through this. So if you're on hard times, think about this one maybe instead of Jeremiah 29:11. God may not prosper you, but you will get through it because you can do all things through faith. So one way or another, we'll get through all these things. Let's look at one more, and then I'll get to the whole point of all this, because some people are like, what are we talking about here? John 8:32, which we all use. We all tell someone not to lie, or even to our kids not to keep a secret. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. I don't know of anyone who hasn't used that one when, hey, just confess. Tell the truth. Be honest. The truth will set you free. Well, it's true. The truth will set you free. It might get you in a little bit of trouble in the meantime, but it will set you free. But that's not what the point of this verse was. Let's put it in context. And it's a short one, at least this time. John 8:31 and 32. To the Jews who have believed in him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. In other words, Jesus is the truth. And Jesus will set you free. It's not a reference to lying or being honest. So when we use these verses, what are we doing to others, maybe to non-believers? For the most part, when people take these verses out of context, it's well-intentioned, doesn't have bad results, may even get you through it. But you're still misinterpreting our Holy Scripture. Regardless of intent or result, misreading the Bible is wrong. And we all know that. We often see it when we want the Bible to mean something it really doesn't. And this is when we're the worst at cherry-picking verses. When we want to come to something and we want to come to a conclusion, we say, you know what? I have this decision, but I'm going to go to the Bible to prove it. And what do? We go, okay, this one says this. This page says this. This page says this, so I must be right. But you're not really trying to go to the Bible for answers. You're going to the Bible to find confirmation of what you already believed in your head, whether right or wrong. This is something we see in a lot of these churches. I mean, look at the one that protests. I can't think of their name right now. The one that protests the funerals. Yeah, I can't think of them right now. But I guarantee, Westboro, thank you, they're cherry-picking verses for what they want to do. They're not going by the Bible. And this happens a lot. We do it. We do it all the time. Oh, you want to talk to a non-believer. So what do? We pick a verse. And we try to preach to them and tell them it'll be better. But what if it doesn't get better for that person? Do you think they're going to go back to the Bible for the next answer? Or go back and look at it? They're going to walk away. They're going to be like, that didn't work. Whatever. Stupid Christian. We hear that enough already. I hate to say it, but we hear that enough already from non-believers that we're lacking in intelligence because there's no proof. Let's not give them more ammunition. When we go to the Bible for our answers, let's go for our answers, not to validate what we already think. So, as we know, you may use it to verify your already beliefs. You know where else we see cherry-picked verses a lot? And there's nothing wrong with it if we go into context. Our own bulletins. They have verses on it. And we come in a lot of times and we go, oh, that made me feel better, my verse. But anybody here ever go home and look up that verse and put it in context? I know I usually don't, but it's true. I mean, it makes us feel all warm and fuzzy, but we don't. So, I'm going to go a little ad-lib because I didn't know what the bulletin was going to say today. But let's look at it. I was going to say, please let it be a verse and not just a random quote from somebody. That would have just ruined the whole thing, because I haven't even looked at it yet. It says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. So let's put it in context. Let's find it. I think that was pretty cut and dry, though. You didn't help me out much this morning. That was pretty to the point. You can't really deny that one. But let's look it up anyway. Just cuz. Oh, and for those who don't know, it's Proverbs 3, 5 through 6, if you don't have a bulletin in front of you. Find it. I really should have marked this part first.
We should have.
Like I said, I was going to ad-lib, and I didn't know what it was going to be today. So, Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. For those, well, I was waiting because I can hear pages flipping, so I know people were looking. So, my son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. For length of days and long life and peace shall they add to thee. Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck. Write them upon the table of thine heart. So shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil. It shall be health to thy navel, and marrow to thy bones. Honor the Lord with thy substance, and with the firstfruits of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine. I'm just going to stop right there, because I don't think anybody wants to go through the whole proverb, but maybe later. But I challenge you, next time we get a bulletin, go home and read it. Put it in context. Because I've seen one with Jeremiah 29:11 on it. For the plans I have for you are to prosper you. I think we had it a week ago, maybe.
Probably.
I think it was last week. I don't have it on me, but it's common that we have that. And we look at it and we go, oh, God's going to prosper me. I'm going to be good. Whew. My pockets are empty right now, but good thing God's going to prosper me. And guess what? When you come back next Sunday and you're like, he didn't prosper me yet, but he's going to prosper me. After about a month, if he doesn't prosper you, you're going to start to wonder. You're going to be like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe he's not going to prosper me. And what are you going to start to do? You're going to start to question it. Unless you get in the Bible and you read it in context, you go, God wasn't even talking about me. He was talking about the Israelites. And he sent them off to another country. And he was talking about, hey, I'll prosper them. None of us have been shipped off to another country. Well, okay, a couple of us have been shipped off to another country. But we signed up for it. We didn't get captured by another country and hauled off. There's a little difference. But we see it in websites and sermons, often when the meaning of the sermon has been chosen before the Bible is referenced. And that's something I was guilty of when I first started up here. When every now and then I'd pick a meaning and then I'd go to the Bible to validate it. I think I got lucky though. But people have planned messages, and instead of looking to the Bible for guidance, they look to it for evidence. But when looking for evidence, like I said, you'll cherry pick. You'll pick that one message that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy, or that one verse, and you take it out of context and it doesn't mean anything. We even see this in the media. We see it in the media. Think about when a reporter does it, and they take a quote out of context. And they take little snips of a person's quote, and they take it to mean something completely different. We get upset, don't we? We get mad at that reporter. Hey, you took their words. But we don't realize when we do it in our own Bible, we're just as guilty. Maybe not intentionally, but we do it. So, unless we see it done in the Bible. We see it preached that way a lot of times. You go to a website. If I hadn't been looking for this particular message, I might have fallen for it with that website and gone, hey, wait a minute. Will prosper me. Things will be good. Whoops. We'll see. But unless it screams at us, it's completely outlandish, we just follow along. So here's my advice. When you're reading the Bible, or even when you see a verse, think about who wrote the verse. Maybe what book it's in. Is it New or Old Testament? Because remember, some of the Old Testament law doesn't apply anymore. It was canceled by Christ. He didn't cancel it, but he fulfilled it. Some of that law. And the Jews who went back to that law after being saved got in trouble. So think about the context and where it came from. Who's the intended receiver of the message? In Jeremiah 29:11, the intended receiver was the Israelites. Not everybody else who read the Bible throughout the time. So was it intended for Jews, Gentiles, maybe Christians? Each of these factors can influence the meaning. What was the situation in which the people were in? John. Or Paul, he was in prison. I can do all things. But he was in jail. He wasn't out to go for a road trip where he's going to drive 12 hours straight with no caffeine. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. No. He was in prison going, I will get through this one way or another. Each of these factors can influence the meaning. Were they being warned of something? Were they needing encouragement? Or even newly converted Christians? Bible study isn't as simple as memorizing verses or reading the Bible. And a lot of us have the apps on our phones even that pops up with a daily verse. How many people have that on their phone? Gives you a daily verse each day that you read. I got it. Got it on mine. I read it every morning. First thing I get out of bed is I read that verse. But if I'm not putting it in context, is it really going to get me through the day? Or is it just a verse to make me all warm and fuzzy and happy through the morning, and then I get to work and go, this is pretty miserable. That didn't work. But maybe if you read the full gospel, that full page, that full chapter, whatever, just put it in its meaning. You might realize, it does have some meaning to it today. And maybe it's not the verse to get you through the day. We all think we can grab the Bible, flip through it real quick and go, this verse is going to get me through. Bad one, Revelations. Let's try another one. This one will get me. Okay, maybe not. So don't always think the Bible's going to be that magic pill that's going to get you through everything. Look for the verse that you actually want. The whole passage that'll get you through. Some of the things will just change if you read the Bible. If you read it just to study it, just to kind of read through, if you're not putting it in context. Have you ever noticed in the 4 Gospels, things happen in a different order in each Gospel? Jesus' miracles are in different orders in the Gospels. It's because back then in biographies, they didn't write it like we do in chronological order. They prioritized. It was different then. And that's what we have to think about. The Bible was different the way it was written. It was written for another audience. A whole another group of people who understood things differently than we do. So we have to look at it a little harder and do a little more homework when we do our Bible research, or we're going to mislead others. So to close this up, because I'm kind of rambling on up here, and I'm losing people, I think. I don't want anybody to fall asleep. Well, we're often well-intentioned when we use verses as pick-me-up, or when we cherry-pick verses, because none of us do it to do anything wrong. We don't do it to be evil. Don't do it to mislead people. We just do it unintentionally and mislead people. When we try to do this, or when we try to confirm our own beliefs, we need to think about, what was God really trying to tell us? Let's really look into it. Really read our Bible. Not just read verses. Read your Bible. Study what it really means. And then it won't be such a kick in the faith when things don't go exactly the way you think because you thought that's what the Bible said. Really actually read it. I know I've had to lately. Amen.